Welcome to Forgotten Hollywood. Now, again, I'm sitting over here because my teeny tiny little co-host didn't want to be on the other couch. We'll see how long he lasts. Yeah. Now, in previous videos, I talked about what a remake is, but I didn't really talk about the difference between those and reboots. And there actually is a difference, subtle though it may be. A remake is a retelling of the same story, while a reboot is a do-over, changing the story in subtle ways to make it fresh and new. The word I usually hear to describe this is a reimagining. The problem comes not just when the changes are not so subtle, or when they're done for political or ideological reasons. No, the biggest issue I have is when the changes alter the core of the story and make something completely new, but with the same title and character names of a beloved classic. Here are several such offenders. Charlie's Angels. This is probably the best made show on the list. Not that it's a high bar at all, but credit where credit is due. The premise is actually the same as the original. Of course, that just entails three girls who fight crime, directed by a man who talks to them through a speakerphone. So it's not hard to duplicate. The problem I have is with the writing. The original Angels were all trained police officers and were highly skilled but working desk jobs or passing out parking tickets. That's why Charlie recruited them, so they could put their training to better use. These new angels aren't what most would call angels. They're criminals that Charlie gave a second chance to redeem themselves, I guess. The trouble is that although they seem to have natural skills, they have no real training, which leads to awkward situations and a few dumb comments about the case. Things that they should have known or noticed, but didn't. It's just bad writing. Speaking of bad writing, the biggest issue was that the pilot had a main character killed off. Well, I guess it's not fair to call someone with 5 minutes of screen time a main character, but they were all set up to be someone important on the team. If you're going to kill off a main character, you don't do it in the first 10 minutes of the first episode. You do it after the audience is invested so that there is a loss felt rather than just sitting there waiting for the other characters to stop crying and figure out what happened. It also helps if the reason for the death actually makes sense. Sadly, neither is true here. True Lies. When it comes to reboots, this one is about as far from the original as you could get. I understand that they had to clean up some of the more adult elements for network TV, but there is no reason to go with complete character reversals. Instead of Helen being on the verge of an affair, she accuses Harry of having one. Instead of her being a scrapper in a fight, she's one step below Jean-Claude Van Damme. Instead of Harry being cool and confident under pressure, this guy needs a Xanax. The company they work for is also lacking, as they've allowed one of their operatives to bring their wife on a covert mission, which goes just as horribly as any sane person would imagine. And they put their headquarters underneath a legitimate computer company full of clueless innocents. Let's hope the bad guys never find out and attack the building. Can a show about a spy and a civilian wife and mother work? Yes, it actually has. From 1983 to 1987, Bruce Boxleitner and former Charlie's Angel Kate Jackson saved the world in Scarecrow Mrs. King. The difference is that Amanda King took several seasons to get trained and used to the spy life, starting out as a typist at the agency, and only pulled into missions by circumstance. While not exactly known for realism, Scarecrow Mrs. King is still closer to True Lies than its own reboot. Perry Mason. This is a textbook case of deconstructing a character. The original Perry was calm, cool, and collected, a legal mastermind who would push the limits but always stop short of actually breaking the law. Not so in this so-called prequel. This Perry is a jaded, emotional alcoholic, barely keeping himself together. By this chain of events, the city's most respected and honest attorney began his career by forging his credentials and taking over a dead friend's practice. How noble of him! This is an insult to a character that stands on integrity and justice. The original Perry is very cautious. unlike the new Perry that walks into stupid situations that leave him injured and lucky to be alive. Yes, this is meant to be Perry before his fame, but we're talking about a man with life experience, not a kid, not even a college student. In short, he is so far from the original that changing the character names would remove anything recognizable. The plot, characters, tone, language, themes, and format all have no connection to what the world knows Perry Mason to be. MacGyver. It's hard for me to compare this show to the original, as, like with Perry Mason, there is nothing recognizable except for character names. Backstories are changed, particularly that Mac was in the military. Strange life choice to a character that historically hates guns. Reoccurring character Jack Dalton was also brought into the remake as a Delta Force sniper. Not sure where that came from, but at least they kept the detail about him being a pilot. The last major change was that Pete Thornton is now younger and a biracial woman. You have to check off those diversity boxes somewhere. The biggest change is that Mac had a team. He rarely worked with a partner, much less a team. Sadly, the one-man army is not the modern trend, and no lone wolves are allowed anymore. Gone is the charm, wit, and humor of the original, mostly due to the absence of Richard Dean Anderson, the man who made the show work so well. I'm also confused as to why they felt the need to label more things than the 1960s Batman. Kung Fu. This seems more like a modern remake of Mulan than the 70s TV show. The original was about a Shaolin monk named Quan Chang Caine, born to an American father and a Chinese mother. The young orphan was raised in a monastery where he learns patience, discipline, honor, and becomes an expert in martial arts. After his mentor is murdered, he retaliates by killing the murderer, a relative of the emperor. Now a wanted man among his mother's people, he travels to America to learn about his father's people. Caine is calm, selfless, and only uses his abilities to benefit others. Jump to 2020, and we have a main character that is a Chinese woman born and raised in California, fleeing the prospect of marriage so that she can learn martial arts in an all-female monastery in China. Her mentor is also murdered, but she fails to stop the killer, so she decides to hunt the killer by going back to California. How she figured the killer had even left China, don't know. Oh, and there's a magical sword that's important. Really, the only recognizable thing is that she uses her abilities to help people. Other than that, it's Mulan in modern San Francisco. Not Kung Fu, not even close. Quantum Leap. Where do I start with this one? It's a continuation of the original, where Dr. Sam Beckett stepped into the Quantum Leap accelerator and vanished. His guide was Al, who appeared as a hologram and gave him information he needed to help people in the past. Each episode was a new time, place, and situation. The format allowed for hard themes to be addressed, but the show remained relatively light. As for the remake, there is a scientist that travels through time with a holographic guide and a supercomputer named Ziggy. They got that much right. The rest, yeah. The format of the original focused on the hero and his journeys to help people. The new show jumps between that and the emotional needs of the ground crew in the present. Seriously, the audience is pulled out of the past sequence because one of the techs was having a moment. There's a reason we only saw the staff in a few episodes. Jumping back and forth both rushes the story and slows it down. You can't go into as much detail and character development when split between two time periods. The audience is pulled left and right. So just as things is picking up for Dr. Song, everything stops and we're back in the present for a software update or some other interruption. It's ridiculous and doesn't come close to the original in any meaningful way. Knight Rider. As a fan of the original 80s classic, this reboot confused me. Michael Knight, as played by David Hasselhoff, was smooth, smart, and even intimidating sometimes. He was quick on his feet and couldn't leave someone in trouble, even if his job said he was supposed to be somewhere else. His partner was his car, called Kit, who was the ultimate smart car. His brain was a supercomputer, his extras numerous, and his wit was perfect. He had as much personality as his human counterpart. Fast forward, and you have Kit, the soulless supercomputer that seems to care about the welfare of the humans it works with, while having no concept of emotions or personal boundaries. Star Trek's Data was more human. To make up for the total lack of personality, this supercar is a transformer. Literally. In 2 different scenes, he went from a sedan to a race car, his battle mode, to a pickup truck. He can also drive over 300 miles an hour, but can't catch a convertible on a highway. Consistency is not this show's strong suit. Worse, though, is Michael, who spends much of the pilot episode confused, sulking, or trying to hit on a girl. He seems to have only 3 modes. At one point, a girl kicks him, takes the man he was protecting at gunpoint, and drives away. What does Michael do? He rubs the spot where she hits him and watches them drive away. Kit was less than 10 feet away. You could see him in the background. And Michael just stood there until she was long gone. It's just pathetic. There you have it. 7 of the worst offenders modern television has churned out. Honestly, some things were done right the first time and don't need a fresh take to make them interesting. When you copy a well-known property, you are going to be judged by how well you captured and honored the original. Doing your own thing and slapping on a famous name doesn't guarantee a hit. It's just like copying the Mona Lisa with finger paints and expecting to sell it for $1 million. It just doesn't work without the structure, details, and all-around skills that made the originals a classic. And I would like to give a shout out to my little co-host who made it through an entire recording session. Thanks for watching. Which of these did you enjoy as the originals? Or do you only know the remakes? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit the bell for notifications, and I will catch up with you next time. You made it to the end of the video! Yay! You made it to the end of the video! Yay!